Richard Ramirez, also known as the Night Stalker, was an American serial killer who went on a crime spree in the 1980s, terrorizing residents of California. Born in El Paso, Texas on February 24, 1960, Ramirez had a troubled childhood marked by violence and exposure to criminal activity. His father, Julian Ramirez, was a known drug dealer, and his parents' relationship was tumultuous. By the time Ramirez was 5 years old, his parents divorced, and he moved with his mother and sister to Los Angeles. Ramirez was deeply affected by his father's absence and developed a fascination with Satanism, which he believed would allow him to connect with his estranged father, whom he viewed as a fallen angel. As a teenager, Ramirez began experimenting with drugs and alcohol, and eventually dropped out of high school in the 9th grade. He became involved in gang culture and began committing crimes such as burglary and auto theft. In 1976, Ramirez was arrested for sexual assault after breaking into a home and attacking a 23-year-old woman. He served 5 years in prison for this crime before being released in 1981. However, Ramirez did not seem to learn from his mistakes and continued his life of crime. On June 29, 1984, the lives of residents in the quiet neighborhood of Pacific Palisades, California, took a horrifying turn when a series of brutal murders and sexual assaults shook the community to its core. The first victim was an elderly woman named Mabel Schutz, who was found dead in her home. The police suspected that she had been bludgeoned to death with a candlestick. But what made this case particularly gruesome was the discovery that the killer had also sexually assaulted her. As the investigation progressed, more bodies began to surface, each bearing the hallmarks of the same perpetrator. A 32-year-old woman named Gertrude Biller was found strangled to death, while a 22-year-old woman named Dale Okazaki had been beaten, raped, and left paralyzed. All 3 women had been attacked in their own homes, suggesting that the killer was targeting residential areas. The police were baffled by these crimes, as the victims appeared to be random, and there was no apparent motive for the attacks. It seemed as though the killer was driven by pure evil. As the body count rose, fear began to grip the residents of Pacific Palisades. People were afraid to leave their homes at night, and many slept with the lights on, dreading the arrival of the monster who was stalking their streets. The media quickly dubbed him the Night Stalker, and the name stuck. As the investigation continued, the police were able to piece together a profile of the killer. They believed that he was a white male in his mid-20s, about 5 feet 10 inches tall with a slim build. They also believed that he was highly intelligent and possibly a drifter, as there had been similar crimes reported in other parts of the country around the same time. However, despite having this information, the police were unable to catch the Night Stalker. He continued to evade them, striking again and again in the quiet neighborhood. On August 2, 1984, 2 women were jogging in the morning when they were attacked by a man wielding a tire iron. One of the women, a 38-year-old named Ann Godal, was killed, while the other managed to escape. The police believed that this was the work of the Night Stalker, but they still had no solid leads. As the weeks passed, the Night Stalker's reign of terror seemed to be coming to an end. Then on October 19, 1984, he struck again, this time in a quiet suburb outside of Los Angeles. 2 young women were returning home from a night out when they were attacked in their driveway. One of the women, a 24-year-old named Jennifer Levin, was stabbed multiple times in the chest and left to die. Her friend, a 22-year-old named Arnie Aguilar, was also stabbed, but she survived. This case was different from the others. The victims had been attacked outside their home, and it was clear that the Night Stalker was becoming bolder with each attack. The police knew that they needed to catch this man quickly before he struck again, and as they worked tirelessly to track him down, they had no idea that he was closer than ever. In the aftermath of the brutal attack on Levin and Aguilar, fear and tension gripped the residents of Los Angeles County. The audacity of the Night Stalker's actions had shocked the community, and people were on edge, wondering when and where he might strike next. The pressure was on for the law enforcement officials to catch this serial killer. Meanwhile, Ramirez had managed to elude the police for months, seemingly disappearing after each attack. However, his luck would soon run out. In early November 1984, a resident of West Hollywood spotted a man fitting the description of the Night Stalker in the area. When the police arrived, they found some of Ramirez's fingerprints on a discarded cigarette pack, which matched those taken from one of the crime scenes. This breakthrough gave the police a lead on Ramirez's whereabouts. As the investigation into Ramirez intensified, the police discovered a trove of evidence that linked him to the crimes. They found his fingerprints on several of the crime scenes, and witnesses began to come forward, describing a man matching Ramirez's appearance lurking around the neighborhoods where the crimes had taken place. The evidence against Ramirez was overwhelming, but despite all the evidence, Ramirez was not immediately arrested. The police wanted to gather as much evidence as possible to ensure that they could convict him. They set up surveillance around his family home in Los Angeles, hoping to catch him in the act. On November 16, 1984, Ramirez left his family home and went on a crime spree, committing burglaries in West Hollywood and Beverly Hills. Little did he know that he was being followed by the police. As Ramirez committed the burglaries, the police watched him from afar, gathering evidence and waiting for the right moment to make their move. When Ramirez returned to his car, the police surrounded it and arrested him. They searched the vehicle and found a loaded pistol, several knives, and a crowbar, all of which would later be used as evidence against him. Ramirez was taken to the police station for questioning, but from the moment he was arrested, he acted suspiciously. He tried to clean blood off his hands in the bathroom sink, and when asked why he had blood on his clothes, he replied, "Because I'm a killer." Although Ramirez initially denied involvement in the crimes, the evidence against him was too strong to ignore. The police had gathered enough evidence to charge him with 13 counts of murder, 11 of attempted murder, 11 of sexual assault, and numerous counts of burglary and rape. At his trial, the prosecution presented a mountain of evidence against Ramirez, including eyewitness testimony, DNA evidence, and the physical evidence found in his car. Ramirez's defense attorney tried to argue that the evidence was circumstantial and that Ramirez had not received a fair trial. But the jury saw through these arguments and convicted Ramirez on all counts. Richard Ramirez was sentenced to death and sent to San Quentin State Prison. He spent the rest of his life in solitary confinement, where he died on June 7, 2013 at the age of 53 from complications of HIV/AIDS. In conclusion, the Night Stalker case remains one of the most horrifying in criminal history. The brutality of the crimes shocked the nation, and the boldness of the killer terrified the public. While Richard Ramirez is now dead, his crimes will never be forgotten. He was a true monster who preyed on innocent people and brought darkness to the quiet neighborhoods of Los Angeles.